Do you remember? I did a report 2 or 3 weeks ago about how 3 states, there was a huge report that came out about how military bases in 3 states were polluting the water supply for the entire state with PFAS, um, because they were using these foams on the military bases, was getting into the water and literally polluting the water in 3 states. This came out, this report came out, and then also it came out that there were emails from Scott Pruitt's office and the Trump administration saying, keep this quiet, don't tell anyone, okay? So this sort of ties into that. What I'm saying is military bases have, their water is full of PFAS, which is poison, okay? It poisons water. So what's happening now? Immigrant children in U.S. detention camps could face yet another health hazard, contaminated water. So put 2 and 2 together. As the Department of Defense begins housing detainees on military bases, the children could face yet another health risk, contaminated drinking water from toxic chemicals common on military bases. Water contamination by a group of toxic man-made chemicals known as PFAS is a problem on military bases. The military's use of PFAS-based foams to quickly douse fires as part of their training exercises. So that's why they're using these foams on the military bases. They're training exercises, starting huge fires, they're using these foams, and then this is getting into the water system. An unnamed official from the Department of Health and Human Services told Washington Post last month that the agency was planning to visit 4 military bases to assess their sustainability as detention centers. U.S. Defense Secretary James Mattis confirmed that. And here's the kicker. The Sierra Club then released a paper saying that at least 5 military sites that they're considering to house these immigrants on are contaminated with PFAS, and they have been reported to be under consideration by the Defense Department to house children. So not only are we taking them away from their family, and now they're back with their family, and everybody's like, yay, Trump's a savior. He has such a big heart. He said he doesn't want to see children separated from their parents. Okay, let me just side note that there's still 2,000 children that were separated from their parents under Trump's administration that they have not reconnected with their families yet. So anyways, now these families are going to be put on these military bases that have contaminated water. And you can bet they're not going to be getting bottled water. This is the Sierra Club Executive Director Mike Brune said, holding children on bases with drinking water potentially contaminated by toxic compounds would compound the tragedy of Trump's immigration policy. According to a recent released report on the safety of the chemical, even places deemed to have to be safe may actually have toxic water, which would be more hazardous for children than adults living and working on the bases. These chemicals are also found in nonstick pans and flame-retardant carpets. They have been linked to liver, kidney, and thyroid disease, cancer, infertility, and the development issues of fetuses and infants. And I interviewed a girl, and it's here, and this is what I was working on for like 3 years. Where I'm from in Buffalo, New York, is like we're toxic to the T. Everything about Buffalo, the Western New York is toxic, and everyone's sick. But the one area is by these factories, Dunlop, and the one factory manufactures the Teflon that has the PFAS. And so if you go back, you can watch an interview that I posted here where this girl lives right next to the factory, this woman, and her sister is 20 years old, in her 20s. She's completely disabled. She wears diapers. She can't speak. She makes noises like a fire engine. That's from the toxins. That's what they're going to be giving to these children now on these military bases. And in that area by that factory that produces the PFAS in Buffalo, New York, but a huge amount of people do have neurological problems. There's a high number of infant deaths and stillbirths, and children are being born with birth defects. Yeah. So here's where the EPA gets shitty, and this is Trump's EPA now. The EPA is no longer protection. There's no protection with the EPA. So recently released government report from the U.S. Center of Disease Control and Prevention suggested that PFAS standards for drinking water should be set to 7 to 11 parts per trillion. That's about 3 to 4 times lower than the EPA's detection limit, and about 7 to 10 times lower than the EPA's recommended health advisory. So the EPA, now Trump's EPA, Scott Pruitt, they've become completely corrupt, just like the entire administration. So the EPA's accepted limit is 7 times lower. I mean, that's like, anyways, I just told you. Do the math. The EPA is just full of shit, saying that this is the amount of PFAS that is allowed in water and still be okay for the children. Well, the Center of Disease Control said, holy shit, absolutely not. And just like the lead issue, there should be no lead in water. No amount of lead in water is safe for children or adults. No amount of PFAS in the water is safe for children or adults. But the EPA comes up with this great number saying, this amount of PFAS in your water is fine. Oh, what's a little PFAS gonna do? It's fine. You're just gonna pee it out. No, you're gonna get cancer, kidney disease, or birth defects. And now the children in these detention camps are gonna suffer the same fate as all the other people around the country who live near these factories that also produce PFAS. And the people in these live around these military bases that use these foams that are putting PFAS into the water, which the American government is trying to hide from the American people. And Google it. This isn't a conspiracy. The paperwork came out. The emails came out. The reports came out. The military is polluting and poisoning the water in 3 different states, including New York. So around this area. I'm in New York. Well, I live in New York. I'm from New York. And they're trying to hide it. So the report was so damning that it was called a public relations nightmare by the Trump administration, which tried to suppress its publication. The CDC uploaded the report to the agency's website in June after bipartisan calls to release it. So straight up trying to hide this report. A public relations nightmare. Oh, this is a public relations nightmare. We can't let people know they're being poisoned. Let's hide it. Good. The Department of Health and Human Services, which includes the CDC, said that in an emailed statement to Popular Science, that in addition to the 2 military bases named by James Mattis, which was the Dice Air Force Base in Texas, the Dice Air Force in Texas is also being evaluated as a potential temporary shelter for unaccompanied children. And that is also an air base that has been deemed by the Sierra Club to have incredibly high PFAS in the water. So that's how they're choosing where these kids are going to go. Let's just put them on the bases where there's contaminated water. The Trump administration's zero-tolerance policy of separating children from their parents sparked public outcry, and then he signed an executive order to keep the detained families together. But like I said, there's still 2,000 children that have not been reunited with their parents because of his zero-tolerance policy. The American Academy of Pediatricians called the separation itself irreversible harm. Children as young as 18 months were held in tender age shelters without their parents, and caretakers were instructed not to hold or comfort the children. What Why? Why? I just like can't even. Tender age camps. Children as young as 18 months old, and the people who work there were instructed not to hold or comfort the children in distress. And it just came out recently that some detention centers run by contractors even use powerful antipsychotics on children. I repeat, it just came out that some of these detention centers are using antipsychotics on these children. Wow, that's depressing. There you go. And all I can say is don't get depressed, just fight harder.